So today on the Treatment Forum, I am so excited to
Yeah.
introduce an incredible legend, Christian
Wow.
Carl, who is an executive creative director, global executive creative director for 160 over 90 and Y&R in the past, and has been a executive creative director at uh, let's see, McGarry Bowen. There's so many. It keeps going and going.
I was a C. It wasn't. I was a CD at Arnold. I was at Arnold for a
OCD,
while.
OCD at
Yeah,
Arnold.
that's great. Yeah, and yeah, ECD, Voss, McGarry, uh, YNR, uh, brief stint as a CCO, which was fun.
Oh
But
wow.
yeah,
Also a children's book writer and TED Talk speaker. So I'm just so grateful that you took the time. And we met on a campaign at 160 over 90 when you were there, when we were working together on the Green Mountain Energy Project, which was such
yeah.
a beautiful, just overall one of my favorite projects. I felt
Oh yeah, that
just
was fun.
so, inspired by the creative. And so that's how we crossed paths. And I've just been following you ever
Yeah.
since.
We got to make a little world. It was
Yes.
fun.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So I wanted to just kick things off with from the audience that would be watching this is probably mainly emerging commercial directors, filmmakers, and commercial photographers. And I think it's really great to get the context of when you're working on a campaign and when you're in the concepting process with a brand. How long are you typically working on a project before you kind of come to the production team or to the artist that you want to collaborate with? What is sort of like the average amount of time, would you say?
Well, it varies, but I mean, I think of, 2 to 3 months, it's probably pretty average amount of time, by the time you get to that point where you're ready to make something. Um, yeah, it might be longer sometimes, and it might be a crazy fast turnaround, and it might be, a month you've had to get it all together. Um,
Okay.
yeah, and if it's like a campaign that you've been developing for months, it could be 6 months of work, to lead to that point. So it varies, but yeah, I mean, you can be living with something for quite a long time, before it's time to make it real. So
Hmm. Right. And do most of the brands that you work with run things through testing? Is that mostly common now, or does it depend?
yeah, it definitely became more common. I know when I worked at Arnold, that we never tested anything,
Mm.
and then I think it's really hard. It's a lot, money gets tight, and then budgets are really important, and people want to make sure they're investing in something that is worth the investment. And so I think more and more the testing had become a kind of like a norm. It was rare in many cases to work on anything of a legitimate size, that didn't have testing behind it. And sometimes it's simple, quick testing just to make sure there isn't anything horrendous, red flag that we weren't getting, or sometimes they're pretty in depth, focus groups and big long reports at the end and all that stuff. And I think the key to all that is to just like know what to pay attention to and what not to, and try to guide the client, and making sure that a stray comment here or there doesn't start to get in our heads too much. But
Hmm.
it's definitely a factor
Yeah.
that we work with quite consistently. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, it's just interesting to me to learn about that process a little bit, just because I've had it more and more where we're actually sort of testing the storyboard. So we're sort
Hmm.
of still
Oh
in
yeah.
the testing process. And yeah, I'm just, curious because it helps me know how much we can push and pull the creative, because usually I come in and it sometimes there is more wiggle room, and sometimes, I don't want to mess anything up that has been perfectly orchestrated, especially with the legal
Yeah.
team. So it's that balance between really, knowing if the creatives and the client are open or if it's been gone through many iterations and that we don't want to,
Yeah.
touch things.
Yeah, it's really tough because I think film, especially and TV, spot production needs to be an evolutionary process, like literally until it's finished. It has to have,
Yeah.
everyone has to go in with the idea that something could change because, man, just good ideas happen and,
Yeah.
things need to evolve naturally. And testing can really, in many ways kind of hurt that freedom of, it's like, you can get all the way into the edit and go, oh my gosh, we're not using music. I didn't even realize we wouldn't even need music. This thing doesn't need music. Like, there's things you just, the creative process reveals things, and
Yeah.
it's like, but the music tested great. It's like, so it's there's this freedom that is lost a little bit, but I mean, I think it's really comes down to like good relationship with your client, and
Mhm.
everybody kind of going into it knowing and setting expectations that hey, things could evolve here,
Mhm.
and as long as they're evolving for the better, and we like what we're seeing, I think we got to go with our gut, and our instincts. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
but it's
Yeah.
touchy.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, when you start to do the outreach to production partners, you're going through, at least from my perspective, if I get to move forward, my reel gets chosen from probably a long list. And so I'm
Mhm.
curious, when you're looking at tons of reels, how you kind of discern things. And also, when you maybe haven't worked with a person or a production partner or a artist director, um, what do you look for, that when you haven't worked with somebody, what is kind of the most important like trait that you sort of look for when you're finding the right partner?
Yeah. Well, in my experience, just having worked in, I haven't worked in a ton of smaller shops, for the most part, in some bigger shops, the producer goes through 100 reels and shows us, 8 or 9.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
little bit of a filtering process that we don't have to go through. And,
Yeah.
when you have a great producer, I mean, I've worked with some incredible producers. I mean, none of my work would be even remotely what it is without, a lot of work they did just to even get it to the point where I'm looking at reels. So,
Yeah.
and, understanding what production companies are doing good work and, who they are, who the people are that are getting good feedback and, who isn't. And, a good producer knows a lot of things and helps shape our process quite a bit. But yeah, when we get down to reels, like I think there's a couple things. A lot of times you get a lot of reels that have what you're about to do on the reel or something similar on the reel. So, well, like this guy's done a lot of people in cars on a journey, and our spot's about people in cars on a journey,
Mhm.
and that can be dangerous because just because they've done that doesn't necessarily mean they're right for the job. Like
Mhm.
I I think I always want to find someone who I'm confident lives in the world that I'm trying to create. And so I have kind of like well, this person has done something remotely similar or is, does situational, comedy very well or whatever it is. And so you want someone like that in the mix because, they're kind of like a good bet, so it's like, okay, someone who has experience in that territory. But I've always just looked at like who has the best work. Like even if they haven't done the category or they've never done a car commercial or they've never, did a lot of car work and it was always like who are the car people, and it's kind of like I, I'm looking for people who just do good work, that everything they do is interesting or they brought something unique to it and um I think that's really important. So, I kind of have like a three thing rule where it's like I have one wild card. It's like somebody just doesn't make any sense, but I love their work, and they just like bring something to the table that I just unexpected. I just want
Yeah.
to know, I just want to see, what they might
Yeah.
do. And then
Yeah.
someone who's just solid, start to finish, all their work is exceptional. They may not have done what we're looking for, but they've done just, everything they touches is gold, so why not? And then, the third thing is like, well, someone who does live a little bit in the world we're looking for, and we can feel pretty confident, if the wild card and the other one doesn't work out, that they might be the ones or whatever. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
kind of like how I've looked at reels. I mean, all the reels need to be, you want good work on all of them.
Of
Um,
course.
but I don't like to look at three reels that are all the same reels with, of similar work. I like to make sure there's different perspectives coming in, different points of view. And, you know, uh, a lot of times comedy directors do really good stuff, that isn't super funny necessarily, but they're just good. They're good with casting and, really good with timing. And, so I think it's interesting to, you know, put some variety in your mix, Uh,
Yeah, I love it. I mean, everything you're saying is just kind of, I think what every director wants to hear is that, I guess the fear is that you don't have the spot on your reel, so you won't be even considered to bid. But then I always sort of try to remind people that we're creating something original, so it's impossible for
yeah,
it to exist before. And then when
exactly.
because I know it's harder for the brand to take the leap of faith to not seeing it, but I get so excited when a creative team or creative director can, see something that you did, and just it gets them so excited and they know how it translates. And then it's
Mhm.
about, how do they sort of pitch that through to a less creative, very strategically minded client. And just everything you're saying is, giving me a lot more, it's reminding me how excited I am when I'm working with people like you that, have the vision to be able to help you kind of cross over a genre that maybe you weren't able to.
Yeah,
Because a lot of what I do and with the reps that I work with, it's like put yourself in a box and, you'll do well when executive like EPs at agencies can, they'll remember you better when they know that, you do X, Y, and Z. And then when you want to break out of that box, it can definitely be,
yeah,
difficult. So
yeah. I
the
mean, there's something to be said for having maybe a safe bet, but I think, man, nothing good gets done that's that doesn't take some risk, and I think. And you can fall flat taking some risk. That's why it's risk. It could be the wrong decision, but I think you got to go out. And if you're gonna go out. Trying to create something unique and different. And the only way you're gonna do that is to bring maybe like a something that doesn't totally make sense. Someone who doesn't totally make sense to the table and go, but everything they do is good, so how could it be bad? You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
who knows? It's the
yeah,
curiosity. I think that curious creatives don't want to go with the sure thing. They want to
yeah,
go with like, what else could it be? What more could it be? What haven't
yeah,
I thought of?
right.
Um, Nothing I've ever made has turned out like I saw it in my head,
Mm,
ever. Like it doesn't happen. Like it just like nothing turns out like, and the thing that's really difficult about spot making especially is the client has a picture in their head of how the spot looks, the
yeah.
creatives have a picture in their head of how the spot looks, the director has a picture in their head of how, and none of them are the same,
Right.
and like, and when you think about that, it's really difficult, because you've all got a whole thing in your mind. You're seeing it, it's just like so clear to
Right,
you. And
right.
then someone goes, "Oh, we're not going to put them in that, location. We're going to put them in this location." You're like, "But I've always seen it here." Like it's like, so you have to really like open yourself up to go like, this isn't my vision. This is like 16 people, different people's visions, and they're all different, and we all have to like kind of come to one place, So,
Yeah.
there's a lot of give and take, and a lot of like, you know, without open minds, it's you're gonna get a mess. So I
Yeah.
think everybody involved has to stay really open-minded and go like, is it achieving the objective? So what if
Yeah.
it's not in the location I thought? Is it achieving the desired feeling, result, you know,
Right. Right.
takeaway that's the important thing is the idea still there, like,
So,
and is it stronger now, maybe, like, so,
yeah. Yeah, it just, reminds me how much magic is in that process because you really are kind of creating this like conglomerate of different thoughts and ideas that are so
yeah.
intangible and then crossing from the path of the mind into,
Into
reality.
reality. Yeah,
And then,
it's hard.
reshaping, yeah, through the edit. And then at some point you have to say it's done because you need to air it. And then, but yeah, you're right about just like the reshaping is just constant, and
Mm.
never ever what you originally thought it would be. And you hope, and yeah, that's the process of just, that's exciting. Like I just made a
Yeah.
short film and, it's about this giving a flower bouquet a voice, that it's never had
Oh,
a voice before, and it's an interview, and they're reflecting on what it's like to be a bouquet. My friend plays the main character, and their costume is a full bouquet. And I never envisioned it sort of in the location that I shot it at, which was sort of this very like kind of 70s retro, like everything's a little kitsch to it. And my work is
well,
a lot more polished, and it's kind of
yeah,
really nice to like get out of my own way of like it's got to be like this, and everything's
yeah,
just more gritty, and the lighting is just more gritty in a way, and it's just like nothing I've ever done. And it's very
oh,
exciting
that's
to
awesome.
just
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
you have to send it to me if when
I
it's
will, I will. Yeah, I'd love to just, I mean, we can kind of continue on, but there's kind of this conversation happening about climate storytelling and, from
yeah.
Hollywood's perspective. And I know you, I'm sure, would have so much to say about that. But yeah, I'll send it your way. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, I
Get
hope
the
you'll be there too.
perfect flower bouquet. I'm
Exactly.
in. I'm in.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so back to so if you so you've chosen the three carefully curated reels that you're excited about to see what they come up with in their treatment. And I'm wondering if the moment kind of you start to page through the treatment or even on the call, do you kind of like have a intuitive gut feeling of like, well, this is kind of who I'm leaning towards, already, maybe from the call or without reading the treatment, just by kind of glancing through it, like, do they get me?
Yeah.
Because in my mind I feel like the treatment should ideally look like the final spot. It's sort of a visual representation as close as possible as it can be, even if you didn't read everything completely. At first glance, my hope is that it feels right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I'd love to hear, like, is there something true to that, or not?
Well, I think chemistry is interesting, because you can have calls. Like I had it was only two director bids, so I only had two directors I was talking to, and I mean I got off the calls with both directors, and I was like, oh, definitely going with that director. There's no question. Like that was awesome. Like his enthusiasm and da 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 da. And I was pretty fired up, And then the other person I talked to was great, nice, quiet, kind of close to the vest, didn't throw a ton of ideas out, asked a lot of questions, didn't really start brainstorming with us or anything, just was kind of, quiet and unassuming. And
Yeah.
I got the treatments, and man, there was just no like, it wasn't like he was unpleasant and fine, fine on the phone, but the treatments were just night and day. I mean, the person I thought based on the call and the enthusiasm, the treatment was just, I mean, it just looked like it didn't have any thought beyond what we talked about on the call, like I got some of the stuff thrown in that we talked about on the call, and you know, but really it just felt kind of like a lot of smoke and mirrors for very little, like thought at the end of the day that actually went into putting that treatment together. And I really
Mm,
like to think or feel that a lot of thought went into a treatment, you know,
of
that there
course.
are there are points made and discoveries made. Like if I read a treatment and I feel like a discovery was made that I never thought of before that they thought of, that's what I'm looking for, is like, oh, I didn't really realize that if we did it this way, it might feel this way, but he figured that out or she figured that out. And,
Yeah,
you know, that's what I'm looking for, someone who's really thinking about it, and the
yeah.
practicalities of what we're asking for. And, when someone says, it won't be practical to do it this way, but we could do it this way, instead of just saying, yeah, we'll do it, we'll do it this way, sure, but, someone who's thinking about, the technicalities of stuff and like bringing thoughts to the table around what they actually think is possible versus what we're trying to do. So I'm
Yeah,
always looking for that in a treatment. And so anytime I read something and I've learned something about my own, script and how
yeah,
it,
yeah,
what it needs to be better or different is what I look for.
yeah.
Um, so it is a combination of chemistry and the work. I don't think you can kind of count either out. But I
Okay.
will say, and I've done this before, like it'll just be nice working with that person, like that person just seems like it'll just be easier, an easier time. Like, they're pretty agreeable and, they kind of like into everything I'm saying, you can get a little, and
Yeah.
and I've realized like that doesn't mean you're going to get a great product,
Mm,
and I've worked with a lot of writers in my day. They're really difficult to work with, and a lot of people didn't, necessarily like working with them. Like, but they're really talented, and they do great work, and they're good people at the end of the day. Just kind of like opinionated and tough, and they don't, they question a lot, and it can be annoying. But man, like
they
you
pushed
know,
it.
yeah, they pushed it. They're good, So I think you have to kind of balance out like how happy do you want to be on the day versus like, how happy you want to be when it's done, and then you
Mhm.
got to manage like client expectations, and they want someone who's collaborative, and who they feel they can say something and will be listened to, and of course that's really important. I don't want to work with anyone who doesn't have the time to listen to other people's ideas, but when you work with someone who can say no in an eloquent way and tell you why, and then you walk away going, oh, that made sense. Okay. I
Mhm.
am looking for people to not agree with me, but have something to say, in response
Yeah,
that makes me trust uh, that that's
yeah,
okay,
right.
So I do think, you know, someone who could feel, you know, maybe I don't know, difficult or, complicated, and dealing with can often deliver the best work. So I think you kind of got to weigh like, you know, chemistry and the treatment and, and then just your gut, which is, I mean, every time a director's decided on, you're always just like, God, I hope, I hope it's the right choice. I really hope, but, and sometimes you shoot and you're like, oh man, it didn't deliver, like the enthusiasm wasn't delivered on, or, there was there's like a inconsistency to the experience. And so I think that's really important too, is you're leading up to picking a director. if they're enthusiastic on the call, their treatment better feel enthusiastic. If they're, if
Yeah.
they're promising something, you better feel it in the treatment. So if at any point you feel, I think as a creative that, you know, what you talked about and what you're seeing or vice versa, like if they're not lining up or if there's like a feeling of, is there a show being put on to get the job? There's a lot of, obviously we're paranoid, like someone could want the work, or need the work. And,
Yeah.
um, but anyway, I think that's really important.
Yeah, I mean, that was so insightful. I think when I've been sort of evaluating, trying to encapsulate my experience of the pitch process, and after sort of reflecting on it over the holiday, and I've been just doing a lot of writing because I've created sort of this mini course for emerging directors just because I mean, there is something to be said about winning and losing and going through the process of learning the
Yeah.
ropes, but there is some things that can be condensed in that process, that, to learn from my mistakes, perhaps. But,
Right.
I think that the more I realize that, I'm more of a creative problem solver and that filmmaking happens to be my craft, but that
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
but I do feel like that's kind of first as opposed to being this freelance director that comes in with all these visionary ideas. Like sometimes it's not helpful. Sometimes, if you
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
come at it from like a strategic creative partner where this brand or you have a specific problem you're trying to solve or a specific goal in mind, that to me I realize is like more and more top of mind when I'm approaching my
That's,
pitches, a little bit more
yeah.
practical. And
Well, that's an
then,
excellent
yeah.
point because all we want as creatives is someone who can solve our problems creatively. Because there are so many,
Right,
there's
right.
budgetary restraints, there's, opinions that matter that, you have to deal with. And, y- it's part of the job. So like, it's just like anybody I work with, or, if you can make my life easier through problem solving, you're invaluable to me, like
Yeah,
someone I can depend on to solve a problem. So I like
yeah,
thinking of approaching the director job as a creative problem solver first, because there's always a handful of them, that you have to kind of deal with right off the bat, and it's how people handle those and what the answers they come back with. And are they finding elegant solutions, to things that are keeping us up at night,
yeah,
super important.
yeah. Do you have an opinion on the length of a treatment? Do you feel like some are too long or too short, or do you just don't care and you just want to make sure the bases are covered?
Yeah, I mean, if it has a reason to be long, I guess that's okay, if it's worth the trip, like I'll take it. I'll take it. But I think, I mean, I have a problem with, not being able to speak in short sentences. I do think,
Mm,
brevity and focus is important uh,
mm-hmm.
in a treatment. But I don't think it should be, uh, in place of feeling like there was a lot of thought put into it. So I think that's the balance is, like, did they put thought into the imagery they placed in here? Does it look good? Does it feel, does it make me feel the what I need to feel and what I want this, thing to feel like? So it can be short, but the elements in it need to be really spot on. I think brevity is always good. Um, but yeah, I want to feel like a ton of thought was put into it, and that doesn't mean you have to have a ton of words necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
A ton of pictures, but
Yeah.
I want to feel like I want to feel something when I look at a treatment. Like
Mm-hmm.
be excited about making this thing.
Yeah.
So they need to
Absolutely.
create excitement and need to create. I think they need to have emotion and feel. And I like it when directors, whether they're writing them themselves or someone is writing them and they're approving them, whatever's happening. I like a personal voice, you know. I like to feel
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
I'm, you know, like I'm, they're talking to me, and I like it to
Yeah.
be feel personal, and warm and
Hmm.
funny or whatever it needs to be. And I like it when directors like reference things we talked about on calls, and like even if it's something, just an anecdote, that kind of so I like to feel like I was heard, and our conversations were taken into account, and
Yeah.
so anytime I see something played back that was something we laughed about on a call, or like I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, he remembers that time, or she remembers that time, we were like,
Yeah. Oh, that's
we
cool.
we laughed about that silly thing, and she found a way
Yeah.
to put it in the treatment.
Yeah.
Um,
What do you think
so,
about? Oh, sorry, keep going.
and no, no, go ahead. I'm done.
Oh no, I was going to. I think we kind of touched on this briefly, but in terms of like alt scripts or rewrites, or do you feel like I guess the clientele that you're working with, you're at a very high level, and so there probably is less of that you're expecting because I'm sure the script has been really fleshed out. But is there an expectation, maybe more so for like comedy directors? Or maybe it depends on the type of director, but are you looking for that? Are you looking for different versions, or is that kind of going too far? Like, where is that balance for you?
I think I'm just looking for the version that director thinks is the best version to bring this idea to life, and whatever that is, that is. I'm not looking to see the boards played back necessarily. Sometimes that's kind of disappointing. It's like, oh, I just got the boards played back to me. It's like, you know, I mean, I've done enough. I could direct that thing. Like I need like I just want to feel like something new is brought to the table, even if it isn't like it's not like a major evolution.
Yeah.
I do want to feel like there's a reason you're here, because you're
Hmm.
gonna you're gonna do something that only you would do,
Hmm. Hmm.
So I think it's important to feel like the director had the you know I guess confidence in themselves to put forward what they think is the thing they want to make and that will be best for the result. Um, I never want to feel like I'm seeing the thing they want to make for their real. No one ever wants to feel that. But you do want to feel like when you get something and you've seen the work that's on their reel, that hey, this is work they'd put on it, and that's why they're showing it to me. And I've seen a lot of really great reels and gotten treatments like you wouldn't even put this on your reel. Like why are you doing this? Why would you show me this?
Yeah.
Like this wouldn't even make it on your reel. Like,
Yeah.
so it's like I do want to feel like, they're making something they'll be as proud of as we are at the end of the day. And if that means maybe losing the job because you went for it, I don't know. That's that's a director's choice. But I would like to feel like there's a willingness to push the envelope, as long as the strategy behind it and the idea is still there. Why not?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really helpful. Maybe moving to I think the biggest mystery, at least from my perspective. I mean, there's a lot that, we don't know that goes on, but I'm super curious about how you present or how creatives present to the client and how they choose to go about that process. And I'm always wondering if, if my treatment is like, projected in a room and you're talking them through it, and maybe that's exactly how it is. Or is it just you're sort of picking and choosing, you have the reel and then you're just picking and choosing some pages, or are you kind of coming up with a summary of this is the high level of what this person brings and condensing it down? I'm always just kind of interested in that step beyond my presentation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, typically we share. I'm sure maybe people do it differently, but I always shared the reels to say these are the 2 to 3 people that will be providing us treatment. So, clients seeing the reels, are
Hmm.
happy with the reels. Maybe they formulated an opinion already of who they think is right or wrong, for the job already. But, so the reel isn't anything new to them by the time the treatment comes. And then I've always been a proponent of presenting one treatment and just saying this is the treatment we're going with. And I would say 90% of the time that's been something I've been able to do, but there are those occasions where you got to present all three, and relook at the reels and then make a recommendation, based on what you've shown. But we don't read the treatments verbatim,
Yeah.
because they are long. But I mean, we page through every page and hit the highlights, and basically it's a chance for us, while they're probably looking at it and reading some things, we're talking about the conversations we had with them, how we like the call, couple interesting things that aren't in here that were said, that we thought were, really valuable. And like, so I use that treatment as a, as just like a placemat for a conversation,
Yeah.
and really that treatment is, not super combed through, at the time. And I don't even know, I'm sure clients go back and comb through it. And sometimes if they see something that, hey, can you make sure that if we are going with so and so, there's some wording in here I'm not, you know what I mean? They'll have some things to say, and that's great. Um, I mean, I work, we have jobs to do, and it is to make good stuff for the people paying for it and making sure that, they can feel good about the job they're doing too. So,
Yeah.
um, their opinions are incredibly important and matter. So I think, yeah, it's for me, it's just a chance to talk and be excited about, the next step, and, you know, highlights for the most
Mhm.
part.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, I always loved just kind of going in with the person we were confident was the right one.
Mhm.
If creatives can do that, I think it's if they can get away with that, it's really, by the time we've been through that whole process, we kind of know.
Yeah. And yeah, you're aligned
Yeah,
on
yeah,
it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And if they liked all three, and we're in there, there's so many factors that play into it,
Right.
and they're not involved in the day to day. So
Yeah.
of all those conversations. So, but that just comes down to having, good relationships and earning trust and gaining trust through
Mhm.
making good decisions, for
Yeah.
your clients in the past. So,
Right, right.
yeah.
Do you have any advice for directors on their pitch calls after you've kind of read through the treatment already? And, what do you like to, like, how do you like them to be structured? Uh, I'm assuming it's not reading off of the treatment, but more of a conversation. That's how I like to sort of treat mine, more a little bit
Yeah.
more high
Yeah.
level and find out if there's any questions or if you want me to dig into anything a little bit deeper. But yeah, I mean, is there, out of all the calls you've been on, are there things that sort of that you like more than or that work for you?
Oh, well, I mean, on initial calls, even prior to treatment, I just like to feel like we're collaborating right away. I think that's the most important thing. And so when we get to director's going to walk us through their treatment, call, I think, by then, there should be kind of a rapport to some degree
Yeah,
already,
right, right.
between creatives and director. And so I think they tend to be, I think it's good to walk through everything and talk about tone, and, because we're gonna have questions, and we're gonna say, like, page 7, there's a couple things there. We were wondering if blank and da da da. So I think
Yeah.
it's kind of like a chance to
Mhm.
just continue to work together. Like that's how I
Yeah.
look at it. Like as opposed to like, now you are presenting the treatment to us,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
think directors should, you know, I think, if you're working with open-minded creatives that you've had good conversations with and have been collaborative with from the beginning, like, those calls I think should be approached like a chance to work with the team again,
yeah,
And so this is what I've done, nothing's really set in stone, and but this is where I'm at, and and we've all obviously liked it, or we wouldn't be on the call, right? We loved your treatment, you should take us through it. So
yeah.
you already know that we like it, so you're not trying to sell us on the treatment.
Hmm.
I think you're just trying to continue to create a relationship
Hmm.
more than anything.
Yeah, I love that approach to it because it's always just felt more natural for it to be informal,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
informal conversation.
Mhm.
Sometimes I have had it where the client is invited to that at the same
Mhm.
time, so
Mhm.
it seems a little bit more formal.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
but I love the way you're looking at it because it makes a lot of sense from your expectations because we've already been talking, for however long. Um, I think
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
well,
I
I
mean,
have,
you pretty much got the job. 90% already got it, so you're not selling anymore. You're just kind of, uh, you know,
the detail.
furthering a relationship, creating more connection. Like, I think, when I get to a shoot and I've never met that director in person before, and I, see them, and like I already kind of know them, that's the best. Like,
Yeah.
and there's already, silly things that we can say to each other that, we already have inside jokes and what have you. I think that's, the way if you ever walk onto a set and feel like you don't know the person who's shooting, I think that, wasn't a good process.
Mm, that's good advice. Yeah.
Yeah, like, hey, like it's so glad to finally, like
Maybe after all
meet
this.
in person, like I feel like we know each other already, I think
Yeah,
that's,
absolutely.
important. Yeah. Well, I
I
felt
had,
like that when we worked together, I didn't get to go, but
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah,
felt
yeah.
it immediately with
But
you.
I felt like if I showed up, it wouldn't be like, oh, hello, hi, I'm Christian,
Hello.
like,
Yeah.
oh, hey, what's going
I
on? Yay,
joined
we're
the
finally
party.
here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Um,
the more you can from your side, create that sense, of
mhm.
partnership and you know, connection, the
Yeah.
better.
Yeah. I know we're going a little bit over. I usually think
Oh,
it's
that's all right.
45. So I have like two more questions if you can.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. The one question is about, let's say, like the two other people that they weren't your favorites, or at least you're not going to present them. Do you feel like it's kind of still interesting to like learn the inner workings of how that person works, and maybe you think of them for another job, perhaps? Like, has it ever worked that way, or has it just
Yeah, I
likely
mean,
they're not good? Yeah, go
yeah, I
ahead.
mean, a lot of times a really hard decision, like
Yeah,
you're like, oh man, like this one's gonna, just I'm not sure what I'm gonna get, but I'm really curious. This one, like I kind of know what I'm gonna get, and I know it's gonna be awesome, and like, but like, so I feel like if you're talking to good people and you're looking at good reels, like I don't think unless, just had a horrible connection with that person and just, the relationship, just the chemistry isn't there at all or something. I
yeah,
think you're always thinking like, oh, you know what they might be good for, you always keep them in mind. I think if what they delivered was good, they just weren't quite right for there's so many factors that come into play.
yeah,
It's not even necessarily like your treatment wasn't right, it just
yeah,
wasn't right because this thing was happened in testing and that thing was said
yeah,
in some other room and one other person thought this and all those things have to be taken into consideration, like so
yeah,
I don't think it's always really the factors are beyond the director's control a lot of times,
yeah.
it's not really a reflection of how good or not good it was. It's just a reflection of timing, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, just not the right time, you know? So,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, I've turned down, I've like not turned down, and that sounds terrible, but I've not picked treatments and used that director later. That's happened to me
yeah.
before.
That's cool.
Yeah, unless they just phone it in and are horrible to talk to, I think if something comes on across our laps that's like right, for
Yeah,
that person, you're like, oh, who could do that?
yeah,
It's maybe
cool.
this person. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean that's really good to know because I always, there is a lot of time obviously associated with it and you
Oh,
can't
I
go
know.
like halfway. And so there's so much you're always
Yeah.
like every single time I'm sure when you're pitching for actual brand work, you're always invested in the idea, everyone that gets killed. So sometimes
Yeah,
so I just outweigh,
well,
is this at least a great relationship I can build on? Just to go through the process, even though, I know I'm not the favorite or I know I'm not,
mm,
but hearing you that you love the wild card makes me excited because sometimes you'd be
yeah.
like, oh, maybe I am the wild card and I could just indulge in my craziness. And then,
Yeah, I mean, why not? Like, even if you're feeling like you're the wild card, then just go wild, Like,
yeah,
and I
yeah,
don't know if other people do
that,
that. Like, I'm always like,
that's your
the
process.
producers I work with, I'd be like, remember, we need a wild card. I'm always like, I want to see a couple wild card reels. I want to see something that you'd never, that you wouldn't naturally. I don't want to see the spot played back on every reel. Like
Right.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My,
But that's what makes it fun. Plus, then you get to see a weird reel or something you never would have seen otherwise. And they might
right,
be good for something else. So
right. Yeah, and my last question is for if there's any advice that you would give emerging directors, because I'm not sure, the span of directors if you're working for maybe
yeah,
younger up and comers, or maybe they're not young. I mean, they could be at any age, but they're just sort of maybe don't have as much experience in the pitch process. Is there, any advice you would give them in improving their pitch, and maybe the do's and don'ts when they're sort of navigating that? Like if it's pretty obvious if you can tell that they, maybe haven't done a ton of pitches in their
yeah.
lifetime yet.
I mean, I think it's really just feeling like your entire approach is because the only way good work gets done is just that everybody's connected and able to kind of speak freely and share ideas and trust tree, safe space kind of thing, like so I think it's making sure that you're creating a collaborative space for anyone you're trying to work with,
Mhm.
and if you ever feel like it's going to a place that you're not interested, don't do it. You know what I mean? But I think the goal is to create obviously do great work that's thoughtful and put it, like be passionate about what you're doing. But at the end of the day, I think it's, you're building a relationship from the first call till the wrap. You know what I mean? Like that's it. And that's how you're going to get another job because we talk.
Mhm.
So, and we want to, one of the reasons I love advertising, because I'm, to be honest, I'm not like super into the business of advertising. What I am into is working with talented, creative people from all walks of life in all different ways, from music to directing to, I mean, that's the thing, that's why I love it.
Yeah.
I work with all these different people, artists, illustrators, designers, like,
Mhm.
and you learn something from all of them. And so I want to, that's what I'm looking for as a creative person, is a valuable relationship with another creative human, who understands what it's like to be be one of us, and
A lot of us, yeah.
and how we get better together, and how we do great things together. So
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
that's the spirit I'm looking for from anyone I work with is like, how much can we learn from each other and how valuable can this connection be, for each other. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Thank you so much. I think I've
yeah.
learned so much about uh, how your thought process is, and I've always just so greatly respected your whole trajectory. Well, since I've met you, I guess
No,
over
thank
the course of the last few years, but
yeah.
just learning more about just the voice coming through that I see on LinkedIn, and just really getting to know you, through the virtual realm. Has been really enjoyable. And I just greatly respect you. So I thank you for taking the time amongst your busy
Yeah, of
schedule and
course.
your voiceover sessions and your Super Bowl ads. And
Well, it's been really fun watching you, blow up. I mean, it's really cool to see all the cool stuff you do, especially like the AI stuff. Like
oh,
you're really like ahead of the game. So it's cool to watch.
oh,
And
thank you so
I'm always
much.
really impressed with what I'm seeing from you. And I hope we get to work together again. That would be awesome. So
It'll be so fun. Yeah,
yeah,
to have
keep
a
it
little
up.
bit.
I love
Yes.
your mission. I love your mission.
Oh,
So,
thank you. Yeah, I'll
yeah.
definitely send you that link, and
Yeah, yeah, I want to see.
hopefully you get a smile. And yeah, feel
Yeah.
free, if there's even just personal projects that you want to kick around. I know you're
All right.
always up to things. We both
Yeah,
are.
always. Like that after I see that film, I'm never going to see a bouquet of flowers the same way again. And that
I know.
means you did something really, really good because,
Oh my God.
like I'll never unsee a book, I'll never be able to unsee it,
Right,
like,
right.
so
Yeah.
yeah, that's really
Well,
interesting. All right.
thanks for the time and have a great week. And we
Yeah,
will
you
touch
too.
base soon. Thanks, Christian.